Hello, all you Yintaros and monologuing protoplasms. We are here to talk about two episodes of Star Trek Picard. First one being Dominion, which was a big old tease, and Surrender, which dropped earlier this morning. We usually have three people here, and I'm assuming the third person's going to, show up soon. Oh, he's restarting his Zoom, so he'll be on soon. But until then, I'm Scott, and with me is currently
Emily.
And we are here again to talk about two episodes of Picard because we took last week off, which is fine because the writers took last week off too, so it's okay. We're going to first talk about Dominion and then Surrender. But before we do that, I have to remind everybody that we are going to be talking spoilers. So, if you have not watched the last two episodes of Picard that have come out, it's episode 7 and episode 8 of season 3, not season 8. There's not going to be a season 8. Season 3. Go back and watch them, or at least watch Surrender. That's the one that's worthwhile. I really didn't like Dominion. Okay, we're going to start spoiling stuff in 3, a 2, a 1. Spot saves the galaxy. And also, Blake's coming in. So, here he comes. And then I'm going to do this. Yeah, for being live. Here we go. Okay. Hi, Blake. How are you?
Good. Could not get Zoom to load this morning.
I was just saying that we're here to talk about Dominion and Surrender, and I threw out the spoiler warning, but I'll do it again because I changed my screen now. So, spoilers in 3, 2, 1, and again, Spot saves the galaxy. Which is the way it should be. So, exactly. Hi, Blake. Emily and I already introduced ourselves, so introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Blake, and I'm late.
Blake's also on Pacific Coast time, so it's like 1 in the morning or whatever it is over there. No, it's not, but it's close. So I was already not burying the lead, Blake, and saying that I didn't like Dominion at all. So let's start with that one. Yay!
Yeah, and I was with you on that. I was not a fan of Dominion.
Well, let's do first impressions, and Emily was shaking her head when I made fun of it. So, Emily, you go first. Tell us why Dominion doesn't suck.
I don't know. I still liked it. I was so happy to see Tuvok, and then I was like, but that's not... Yeah. It's Tuvok, but it's not Tuvok. It was just nice to see a familiar face. And I actually did like getting more of the backstory about the Dominion War and the virus they created for the changelings, because I felt like that was a big empty spot in DS9. Was like they gave the virus to Odo to pass along, but they never talked about the development of it.
But they didn't in this episode either.
They taught in episode 7.
They were talking about how they made these changelings different, but that wasn't the
I kind of took that to be because she talked about in reference to them stealing the cure. So I kind of thought
that was Odo who stole the cure inside of himself.
And he stole the cure, but they had to create the virus somehow. So Project Proteus seemed like a continuation of whatever they used to create the virus. I felt like it gave a little more background into what might have been going on that was missing in DS9.
I think you're trying really hard to like this episode, and that's cute. It's fine. It's fine. Blake, tell Emily how she's wrong.
You mansplain to me this morning before I have my coffee?
That's what I do.
Scott, I'm going to leave the mansplaining to you on this one. I'm going to let you row that boat all by your own damn self. But I will say I was not a fan of Dominion, and my main reason was, especially now that I've seen episode 8, because we've also watched Surrender, is they could have been one episode. I think it was a little bit drawn out. We've commented this whole series that this has moved rather tightly and been, not an episode that we've watched where we've sat there and went, really, we just did this, move on. And I think that kind of got to the point with Dominion where when they did that cliffhanger and then seeing where it picked up, it just seems like some wasted space a little bit. I think they might have been able to fit some more in there. But out of all the episodes we've seen so far, this is the only one I've not liked, I think that's saying something. I did like a few pieces of it. I did like that, you had allegedly Tuvok on the screen. It turned out to be a changeling, but I did like having Tim Russ back in, seeing at least him in the form of the legacy character again, coming back in, and that interaction with him and Seven before he outed himself as a changeling. I think that was kind of a nice way to do that. So I liked the start of it. I liked that piece of it, but I think the whole, trap of putting Vadic on the Titan, I just was not a big fan of how that episode ended.
Yeah, I'm not holding back in the fact that I think this is the weakest episode of the season so far. And what you said basically is that I did appreciate the tight editing and the really kind of just building up the thriller aspect of that first scene, the cold open where she is talking to Tuvok. For one, you get Seven in command again, which is always good. And Tim Russ is fun to watch. He's been like the most active Star Trek actor after his show has ended. Like, he's done fan films. He has been all over the place. So the fact that he gets to actually reprise his character again on a real show is nice to see. And I think he will get to reprise his character, because I don't think you leave that one hanging. I'm sure the real Tuvok will show up. And as much as I'm not a big fan of Voyager, when that Voyager theme swells, when she thinks that she's found somebody who will help her out, is really nice. And that's why I also love it when they pull the rug out from under them. But then it's all just kind of downhill from there. For one, and this has been discussed by other folks as well too, since we're a week late on this one, is I am getting overly tired of the fact that Starfleet is always evil at this point in continuity. And yes, I know it's just the one folks at the Daystrom Institute and all that good stuff, but it's just getting tiring. Section 31 was a nice, fun novelty on Deep Space Nine when it was a rogue group who were hiding in the shadows. But now it seems like Starfleet is just doing its thing. And yes, Starfleet did create the changeling virus and everything else, but it's just everything we do now is Starfleet's evil, and that's it gets old for me. Also, to your point, Blake, I wish something would happen. And I'm going to say the same thing about Surrender as well, too. At least some other stuff does happen in Surrender, which is why it's a better episode. But it feels like this is an 8-episode season that got dragged into 10 episodes to fill some gaps. And it's starting to drag on me. Now, I know it's probably not going to drag anymore after the end of Surrender, but even with Surrender, it's just like, come on, guys, let's move forward here. Come on. But yeah, so Emily, I'm still intrigued by the stuff with the Dominion virus, the changeling virus, because the way I saw it was everything that happened to Vadic happened after the war. Like, her and her 9 compatriots were captured after the war, and they started experimenting. So it's intriguing that it could be seen that this is actually a little bit more into the Dominion War than anything else, because I didn't see it that way.
Yeah, and I don't know that Project Proteus was occurring during the war, but I feel like it would have been an extension of whatever they were doing during or like at the onset of the war to create that virus. Because it's not like it just happened to show up. It was created and they had a way to cure it. So they had to make it somehow. So Project Proteus might have just been a continuation of whatever horrid testing they were doing.
As much as I just said that I don't like the fact that Starfleet is always the bad guy anymore, I did like the fact that Vadic called Picard on his shit. Because the episode before, Picard's like, well, but Starfleet in the end gave the cure to the changelings. And we all said when we watched the episode, that's bullshit. And then Vadic comes in Dominion and says, that's bullshit. So I did appreciate that.
Yeah.
And I will say, and I continue to believe, even though I was not a huge fan of this episode, Amanda Plummer's performance is still phenomenal. And You know, I actually was seeing one of the reviews the other day that was suggesting Amanda Plummer could break Star Trek streak at the Emmys. There is actual Emmy talk around both her and Michelle Forbes, actually, at this point.
Well, they both would deserve it.
Yeah.
I love the fact, and again, I would be less dogging on this episode for two things. The first one, to Amanda Plummer, I love the fact that she is, from start to finish of that episode, she has a plan and she's executing the plan, and everyone else is just running around like rats in a maze, and she knows it, and they know it. They know. She flat out said, "I know you're going to do good cop, bad cop. I know this is going to happen," but they just play along and fall into her trap because our guys are stupid in this episode. But the reason why I dog on it is I wish these two episodes, and we'll talk about Surrender in a minute, I wish these two episodes were one episode. I think it would have been a much tighter fit. I think you would still get a lot of the Amanda Plummer stuff, but you would also not have to waste, an hour and a half when you could have done it in 50 minutes. The other thing that go ahead.
And I agree with you. I think they could have cut the part with the Titan getting the changelings off. I think that could have been cut to one episode, and then they could have expanded more on that ending. I know we're going to get to Surrender in a minute, but I think they could have expanded a bit more on the reunion of the TNG crew as a whole, and into Deanna's session with Jack and exactly what was beyond the red door. Instead of the cut being, the hand on the door, open the door and then cut it and leave us all going, son of a.
Yeah, this is we'll talk, because I haven't dogged on Surrender yet. Surrender is a better episode, but we'll talk. The other reason why I'm not a fan of Dominion episode is you all saw it if you go back and watch our episode from 2 weeks ago, because I said at the end of the episode, hey, I haven't even seen what the title of the episode is yet, so I don't know what's going to happen. And then Blake throws out, well, the title of the episode's called Dominion, and I freaked out. I got very excited, and I got nothing out of this episode. So this episode was entirely a tease for me, because I'm thinking, okay, Dominion, what could happen? Are we going to hear from the actual Dominion? Because they're still out there. They're the warm and fuzzy Dominion under Odo, but they're still out there. So are we going to hear about them? Are we going to get maybe a connection to DS9? Are we going to go to DS9? Because, obviously they went to Chitaka, which is from Deep Space Nine. So, but we got nothing out of this episode except for our characters running around like rats in a maze on the Titan for 45 minutes. And so it's frustrating. And along with that, the whole backstory of Vadic, to me, was weak. But I've already said that 5 times. Is there anything else you guys want to talk about Dominion as we play catch up? And then we'll dive into this week's episode, Surrender. Anything else you want to talk about with Dominion? And oh, by the way, Benway, maybe you should watch the episode before you spoil yourself. Just saying. He's like, I gotta go watch the episode before I talk about it. Well, why are you here?
Because we're fun.
That's why there's Scott questioning why people are viewing it. Something we do on a regular basis.
I know.
Here
well, I mean, you have to, don't you? I mean, seriously, do these people need help? Do they need help? Okay. Anything else in Dominion, guys?
We do.
Okay, let's talk about Surrender, where Spot saves the universe. First impressions, Emily, on this week's episode, Surrender.
I've already watched it twice this morning. I loved it. I loved Data and lore integrating. I loved that part.
I'm going to start calling you Dr. Pulaski now.
Sorry, Data.
You called him Data.
I know, and I know better, but
there's a legacy character.
You try so hard to say it right, you fuck it up all the time. I'll drink my coffee. Maybe
okay.
I'll help.
You've only had 30 years to figure it out. It's fine, Emily. It's fine.
Crap happens in life.
Yeah, I get flipped off again.
I know. I'm just picking on her because she flipped me off. Now she has it coming. Hey,
why are we friends again?
Hey, Emily.
And that's why we're friends.
Exactly.
Okay, so can we talk about what Vadic is smoking? Literally smoking?
It's interesting that a changeling smokes. I guess it's, a security blanket of some sort. I don't know.
Right.
I got nothing.
I actually.
Well, I mean, they already have made a weed reference this season. Maybe she likes the marijuana.
I mean, do you need it to cope with all the rage?
When Daystrom worked on her, they also gave her a set of lungs, so she's fine now. Well, I guess she has a set of lungs after what happens at the very end of the episode, but we'll get there. Blake, what are your first impressions on Surrender?
So I actually like this one. Again, probably not one of the strongest of the season, but I actually liked this one. I thought, again, it easily could have been combined with 7, but the pieces in it where you get to see how this kind of starts to resolve itself. You see and then that whole scene in the conference room where you have the next gen cast come back and all sit down together around that conference table. But the part for me is I love that interaction with Brent Spiner and Brent Spiner. Data and Lore, as they're kind of in that construct, having that battle for who's going to ultimately win out. And just that interaction between the two of them and the memories Data pulled. As a longtime fan of Star Trek, watching every single thing he pulled out as a memory and going, "Oh wow!"
Well, this was our Tasha reference.
The Sherlock Holmes hat, the hologram of Tasha Yar. Terry Metalis has said all along, Tasha was going to get incorporated into this season somehow, and that was it. He pulls out that hologram that sat on his desk that was the hologram of Tasha Yar, and then Spot. Who doesn't love an appearance by Spot?
Right.
And then you see that Lore thinks he wins, and then Data just comes back and says, "Yeah, screw you."
Yeah. Well, and this is why I like Surrender, and I wish Dominion and Surrender would be one episode, because thematically they would make sense. And actually, Sean agrees with that. Sean says, true, feels like 7 and 8 could have been one episode. I'm betting it was partially budget related, and the next 2 will probably be pretty dense and amazing. Yeah, there's a thing in TV called bottle episodes, and kind of the idea there is to save money. We're on basically 1 or 2 sets in both these episodes. And I absolutely think you're right, Sean. I think it's because we're going to have we're episode 9 and 10. Everyone who has seen it has called it a movie. So I think they were saving their budget for episodes 9 and 10. At least I hope. But yeah, to what I was saying, thematically, as much as I was complaining that our heroes are stupid in Dominion and they're just running around letting Vadic take over the ship, on the flip side of that, in Surrender, we get to see our heroes be smart. We get to see that there are... Oh, I'm sorry, Emily, go ahead.
They do what they do that we expect.
Which is what Beverly said in episode 4. Let's do what we're good at. So you've got the 2 surrenders. Jack surrenders himself to Vadic, and we find out that no, he hasn't. They had a plan all along. The plan was to get onto the bridge and hope to God that Data figures himself out, which goes to the other piece. Data also surrenders, but doesn't. They're both red herrings, but it's smart. And to your point, Blake, yes, I loved watching Brent Spiner go up against Brent Spiner, and it made sense. Lore is always the domineering one, and Data played into it. Geordi's over there telling Data to fight. That's not what Data does. He was never going to fight. He was going to Sherlock Holmes him and outthink it. And actually, there was when you watch it again, and Emily, I know you just said you watched it twice. When he pulls up the Sherlock Holmes hat, the line they have from the episode that plays is something along the lines of, "There's never anything that Sherlock has that he doesn't have for a reason." And that's just tipping the hand that the Data's doing this for a reason. He's picked these items for a reason. And I love that. And we were all right, which it wasn't exactly hidden, that at the end of the day, Data and Laura are going to merge together, which I do love as well, too. I like that Brent gets to kind of play Data in a new way. And the last thing I'll say to that before we have more of a discussion is I also like that they did reference season 1. And Picard's like, I feel like we've maybe stolen something from you because you asked for death and we gave it to you and now you're back. And his answer is, that person is resting peacefully like he wanted to. I have other things to do. And I love that they still did reference that, even though for some folks, they don't, we can pretend season 1 didn't happen. So where do we start, guys, with Surrender? What do we want to talk about?
Can we talk about how funny some of the lines
Oh
were?
yeah.
Like with Deanna and Riker, and she was like good in bed, bad at pizza.
Just like me.
Exactly. Or even Worf when they're all at the table and he's like talking about all this growth and thinking about them, and I wanted to send you their heads.
Can we talk for a minute though that Changeling Riker immediately went to Deanna's bed? Immediately. Because they've only been out there in space for just a little bit. And Deanna said, you left as soon as Picard called. So immediately Changeling Riker's like, hey, let's screw.
Well,
I thought she was just teasing him with that because she
no.
knew where
I bet you Changeling Riker showed up and said, let's make some pizza. Hey.
Well, you're right. A couple of lines in there I love also with Deanna when they're talking about, both of them hating living on Nepenthe. Yes. And the way she describes the house is retro prairie hippies.
It's okay. We all hate it too.
But I think my favorite one, and again, what was one of the best lines in Generations? It's when Data just sits there and goes, "Oh shit," right? As Deanna's about to crash the saucer section. But with this one, when they get Data online to take over the ship, and he just goes, "This is your positronic pissed off security system."
And that's we're starting to get more of that too, because that's that lore coming out, which is just fun. Like, what did he say to Geordi when they came into the ready room? And he's like, with a little bit of flair, and he does this.
Yeah.
Like, Brent Spiner's having way too much fun at this point. The one other line I like,
Dorn, though, just trying to play some of these scenes straight as being unintentionally funny.
Yes,
like with the one's personal space as a right.
Well, that's
Worf is not a hugger.
Miss Powell says Worf and Deanna was so funny. I loved Riker watching that whole thing. Is like, is this the rescue or is this still torture? The line that got me and I just busted up laughing was, "What's worse than a woodpecker? A woodpecker with two heads." Or no, yeah, it was that. Mm-hmm. Sean goes back a little bit and says, "It was clearly set up when Data was saying something like, 'My memories make me who I am.' I knew what was up." Yeah, and I mean, it wasn't hidden. And you know what? I don't want to get into complaints on Jack yet, but I'm going to. With the Data lore thing, we had the issue and we fixed it in basically 2 episodes. It's done. Data and lore are now Data lore, the episode. And we're moving on. Can we not just open the damn red door already and get that done with? Anything else you guys want to talk about with the funny stuff, as I just kind of transitioned without transitioning?
When Vadic says fucking solids.
Yeah. But being referred to as the monologuing protoplasm.
Yes, yes.
Just before getting kicked off the ship.
Well, and again, we got Seven getting the 2 best things to do in this episode, which is 1, throwing him off the ship. But can we? Okay, I'm gonna nitpick for a second. Who the hell at Starfleet Engineering decided, hey, let's make the escape hatch the view screen? That sounds like a good idea. It's fun to watch though. But Seven gets to throw her off the ship, and then Seven gets to blow up the Shrike, which is always fun to watch as well too.
We've seen that before, though.
Have we seen the? Well, I mean, we've seen the front bridge be blasted. Have it actually opened before?
Yeah. In Next Gen, one of the episodes where there was an Oberth class. It wasn't the Enterprise, but it was one of the.
Oh, the Death Trap Oberth class.
Yeah, the Death Trap Oberth class, when they were trying, I think it's the one, it was the Britannia, when they were trying to push it out of the way or something. They said that they blew the emergency hatch, and it was the front view screen was blown out.
Okay, I'll give it to you. I never want to set foot on a Oberth class because they always explode. Yeah. I had something, and then I lost it. Oh, the question I have for all of you real quick, and for those in the chat as well too, is Vadic gone? Do we think that's the end of Amanda Plummer and Vadic?
I would actually be kind of sad if it is, because she is just so great. Like, as creepy as she is and as horrible as her character is, her acting is so phenomenal. I would actually be kind of sad to miss out on 2 more episodes of it.
And I kind of think it is. And I agree with you. I think this is a sad end. I think the character deserved more of an end than this. But I would have loved to have seen Vadic gone out, blown up on the bridge of the Shrike or something, but just to get busted up over the front of it. But I think this is the end of it because we've said all along the changelings are not the big bad of this season. They're getting used just like everybody else. And we had that line, what was it in Dominion, where basically is you're going to get what you want when we get what we want.
Yeah.
I mean, it was made very clear the changelings, the separate sect of changelings is working for somebody else for a mutual purpose.
Floaty skull guy said your people as opposed to our people.
Yeah. So I think this is going to end up where, and that's why they cut before they open the door. They're going to open that door, and that's going to give us who the true bad of this season is, which when we get to predictions, I'm still going to hold to my prediction on that because I think the clues are lining up.
Yeah. I'll be interested to see what you say on that, Blake, because I've got some ideas too. But again, just this, I think we're going to be okay now because I think episodes 9 and 10 are going to be fine. And I have no doubt that they're going to be good because I've heard from tons of people that they're going to be good. But it's the same thing here with that damn red door again. As at the very end of Dominion, Vadic's like, it's time to tell Jack who he is. And we're now an episode later and we still don't know who he is. Stop doing that, writers. Stop. Bad. Stop it. Stop it. Miss Powell says, yes, even if her protoplasm can reform, they need to get to the big bad in 2 episodes. Yeah, I agree with you and Blake on that. I think Amanda Plummer has been fun, but I think Vadic is played out. And I actually think Vadic was played out about 3 episodes ago. If you had her in episodes 9 and 10, you would have to spend 10 minutes doing exactly what you just did, and that's getting rid of her. Because she's not going to be the main force at the end of this. I think the main force, well, we'll talk about predictions in a minute, but she's not going to be the main force. And so you have to kind of push her off screen and get the Shrek off screen as well, too. But I do love the fact that at the very end, she does get that line, Emily, that you said, and it was fun. As much as I can do without my swearing in Star Trek, even though I swear all the time, at least this year they have done it for a reason. They've dropped 2 F-bombs now, and both of them have been at least funny F-bombs. So I'm good with it. So let's go ahead and talk about our good buddy Jack and his whatever the hell's going on with him. Now, we won't do predictions yet, but just talking about him in the episode, what do we think about Jack and his work throughout Surrender?
I mean, I think it's been played very well. You see the conflict of he doesn't want these people suffering or dying because of him. Mm-hmm. So I think Ed Speleers has played the role very well because you can see the conflict that he's going through with that as a character of wanting to just go turn himself over and try to save these people, which I think is the parts he gets from, what have Picard and Beverly done? They've, put themselves on the line for others. That's his parents, and that's him carrying that on. I do agree with you that, let's just find out what this is already. And they keep alluding to it. They stole Picard's body because, they took the parts of his brain that were impacted by what was supposedly Irumodic syndrome. But there was that throwaway line in Dominion where it was not determined that it was actually Irumodic syndrome. Mm-hmm. So, they took those pieces. So Jack has that same whatever it is. And I think that's what we're seeing manifest. Now, we never saw Picard get glowy red eyes or go whoop a corridor ass full of changelings' asses. But, it's interesting to see how this is developing. It just needs to speed it the hell up.
Emily, how about you?
Yeah, I think he plays it really well. I'm still not sure how I feel about him as a character. And that might be because he's so unsure of himself, really. I mean, I think that level of insecurity, he's known for years that something is different. Something is essentially wrong, but he hasn't really told anyone. He's kept most of it to himself. But I think it's acted incredibly well.
I do like the fact that he gets counseling from 2 different people in this episode. Obviously, Deanna at the end, but Vadic does it too. Vadic's like, you've been trying to help people to kind of offset how you feel and how whatever's going on with you. So you've gone out of your way from planet to planet trying to help other people. It's like trying to project what you want to be onto other people. It was interesting. For me, I think Ed Spielers is playing it really well. I think he's playing the emotional breakdown because he's very confident when we first find him in the first couple episodes. And then now he's got tears running down his eyes just from exhaustion more than anything else. And he's kind of hunkered over, but he's still carrying out the plan. I love when he does do that that little change in about face, and instead of it being a thermal detonator, it turns out to be just a force field, which I didn't see coming. As much as a lot of this stuff, is fairly predictable, not in a bad way, but you can see it coming, like the Data Lore stuff. I didn't know what was going on the bridge until it happened, which was smart, and I think it was fun to watch. And I think that I appreciate now it's almost basically guaranteed that the whole fan theory is that Jack is not Picard's son and Jack's whatever is not the case. Because even Deanna says in this episode, it's not that the evil is within him, it's passing through him. It's using him, whatever this evil is. What she say, this ancient and weak evil. So that's good, because at the end of the day, and I've said this several episodes ago, if they decide to not make Jack Picard's son, Beverly's son, it kills the entire theme of this series, which is family and legacy and everything else. So the fact that they're going to not do that is I appreciate. So yeah, we got some predictions popping up in the chat. Do you guys have anything you want to talk about the episode proper before we dive into what we think is going to happen with the next episode?
I think I'll just add on the proper, again, just watching some of the scenes that they've shot on these sets, the amount of detail they put into crafting the sets of this series. I mean, that opening shot on the Titan bridge, you see all that detail they put in to the bridge ceiling, to the console displays. I mean, again, just the detail and quality of the sets for this series. I said the same thing when we watched Discovery Season 2, which the amount of detail and care that they put into the Enterprise sets and establishing that, I seriously hope that we get the Star Trek Legacy spinoff that has been generating a lot of buzz. I think they've got the sets for it. I think they've got the talent for it. I hope we get to see more of this.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up the bridge. A couple things I wanted to hit on with the bridge crew. One, we got a great interaction between Shaw and Seven. That, again, Todd Stashwick is the breakout star of this season. And his, telling Seven that you don't always get to have the warm and fuzzies. And you have to recognize that. And then, of course, watching the crew get threatened, and Stashwick again, Shaw is saying, you can't do anything right now. If you get in the way, you're just going to get killed. You have to pick your battles. And it's good leadership. It's terrible that he has to say it. And of course, we do lose one of the crew members, but he's right. If Seven goes in there guns blazing, she's just going to get killed. So what does that help anybody? And I do, I complained about Discovery on this case a while back, is we don't care about the bridge crew Discovery, at least in the first two seasons. I would argue in the third and fourth, you start to get to know them a little bit more. But with this, we know these guys, even in the few episodes we've seen them. So when they all have guns pointed at their heads, we care. That's Pal says the same thing. Loved Lieutenant Murrah in the episode. He's Starfleet. I'm not going to turn him over because I'm Starfleet. Even though he knows that he's never going to see his son again, that he just referenced, he's not going to turn him in. He's not going to do anything else because that's his job. And I love that. I also like the fact that there was a little bait and switch there, because I think it was too obvious to blow the head off of the crying Starfleet officer, turning it over to the Vulcan, who, again, we've seen and had some dialogue, so we knew who she was interesting and a good way of playing that off. And the fact that they only took out one is good, because they could have drawn that out as well, too, and they didn't. So I think adding to the escalation of taking one of the bridge crew out was important, but it would become gratuitous if they kept doing it after that.
Yeah, I'm glad they. I'm sad they took out any of the crew, but I'm glad it wasn't, what is the name, Ensign Esmer, because he was the one early in the season that Jack heard saying, "I know what you are," or hallucinated it. So I was going to be very disappointed if she was the one that got eliminated, because I feel like that leaves a space open for maybe for something interesting potentially to happen.
Let's go ahead and talk about what we think is going to happen next. And for those who've been watching us for a while, we got the first 6 episodes as screeners, but we've been with all of you and not knowing what happens next. And Terry still hasn't sent me episodes 9 and 10, although I do see now that Terry is the director of episodes 9 and 10. So I'll be interested to see how he does as a director. He's a writer of episode 10 and the director of both episodes, which again goes to my theory that episodes 9 and 10 are one big chunk of a movie. But okay, let's go to Emily first. What are your predictions? What's going to happen?
I don't have any predictions.
You're very helpful.
I know. I'm super helpful. That's my job. That's why I'm here, is to be very unhelpful and pronounce data incorrectly. I actually don't really want to try to make a prediction. I kind of just want to see where they take it, because I'm afraid if I get too hung up on a prediction, I could end up vastly disappointed, and I don't want to do that.
A fan doesn't want to create their own idea of how the series should go and then bitch about it when it doesn't go that way? Emily, you've seen the internet. That's not how this shit works anymore.
I'm going rogue here, okay? I'm doing something different.
Before we go to Blake, Miss Powell has a couple of predictions. One is, I do hope that Picard can advocate for the tortured changelings or get the Federation Council to get rid of Section 31, part of the Starfleet Charter. I think Kurtzman loves Section 31 way too much for that to happen, but we'll see what happens there. And then also, Jack is Lakutis' son, just as he is John Luke's, and the next episode title is Telling. The next episode title on Wikipedia is To Be Determined. Blake, have you seen the title yet?
VOX.
Okay. Voice.
Yep.
Okay. Let's go to Blake. Predictions.
So I made this last time, and I'm still thinking this lines up a little bit to point towards the Pa Wraith. We've seen the DS9 references, and I'm basing that even more on, how Cisco came about was the prophets literally took over this woman, sent her to Joseph Sisko. They had Ben, and then, Ben's mother disappeared because they left that their job was done. They created the emissary, who would be the emissary. And I kind of see that almost playing out here, where was it that same type of situation that got Beverly and Jean-Luc to conceive that particular night or whatever? I know they've had the relationship, so it wasn't as much of a stretch, but was that engineered? But also watching some of the clips, the red eye thing, then you've got the reference in here to a ancient but weakened enemy, or ancient but weakened evil.
Yeah.
But on the door, when they show through the keyhole, because they finally zoomed into the keyhole, you see the fire on the other side of it, like a flickering flame.
Yeah. Which,
as much as you've hated on the fire caves.
Oh, don't worry. I'll talk about that in a minute. Go ahead.
I really am thinking, as much as they've tried to tie in loose ends from DS9 and others, I think the big bads here might just be the Pa Wraiths, and I'm still holding out to see how that might get resolved. And I'm excited to see how that could get resolved.
Yeah. I would not doubt it at all if you're right. I don't think you are, but I would not be surprised if you're right. Here's why I don't think it's the Pa Wraiths. One, I'm a huge DS9 fan, as the two of you are as well. The weakest part of D Space Nine for me is the Pa Wraiths. It's just, even in What You Leave Behind, which is amazing 2-part episode, and I still cry every time I watch the damn thing. When we get to the fire caves and we get to Dukat and the Pa Wraiths, I just don't care anymore. And the reason why I don't care is when the Pa Wraiths became a thing, Dukat got neutered. And I go back to Waltz, that episode where it is Dukat and Sisko when they crash land on a planet, and it's basically duet, but instead of Kira and what's his face, it is Dukat and Sisko. But because Dukat is not really Dukat at that point, it kind of weakens the whole story. So I've never been a big fan of the pod wraiths. The other reason why I don't think it's the pod wraiths is that's not TNG. I think it has to have something to do with what has happened to these characters. And I think because this is a TNG send-off, it has to have something to do with them. So I would have no doubt if it is something, maybe not an entity that they've experienced before or dealt with before, but at least that has an ancillary connection to something they've dealt with before. That being said, again, Blake, I think you 100% could be right, and all the signs point to that, and there's a lot of evidence that that's exactly what's happening. I just don't thematically see that is what's going to happen. That being said, I have no idea what it's going to be, because they've teased this out so long that at this point it could be anyone behind that red door. It could be you know, I don't know, Could be Trelane or whatever his name is. I don't know. But we'll see on that one. The one thing I will predict for sure is, and it's been hinted at a couple times, and now that the entire crew's together, we know that the Titan can't take on the entire fleet by itself. No ship can take on the entire fleet by itself. So what's going to happen is we're going to have to get some support, and as I've been saying from the beginning, they're going to be on the Enterprise bridge. And the more I think about it, and the more people have been throwing it out there, there is a hangar on the facility that Geordi was commanding that we did not see inside of. And I'm fairly sure there's a Galaxy-class starship in that hangar. I would prefer it to be a Sovereign class, but it's not going to be. It's going to be the Enterprise D, or at least the saucer section with a new secondary hull of the Enterprise D. So I think episode 9, we're going to get that going. And then episode 10 will be the big send-off, the undiscovered country, if you will. Because episode 10 is called The Last Generation. And I think that is going to be the big hurrah for everybody. That being said, I think that, to your point, Blake, earlier, it's not going to be the end for any of these characters. I don't think anyone's going to sacrifice or lose themselves at the end, because I think there's some tension here that if they want to go somewhere else with these guys, they can. And I think that even though I've dogged on the last 2 episodes, I do believe that Terry Matalas should get a new show to run. And if he wants to do this Star Trek Legacy thing, let him do it. Because this has been the strongest season of Trek television we've had in a long time. I would put it right up there with Strange New Worlds, but those 2 right there are the strongest pieces we've had in a very long time. What else we got, guys? Anything else you want to talk about before we wait another week for us to find out maybe who Jack is? Maybe.
I will say I agree with you. I don't have a specific prediction, but I agree with your points that the power wraiths don't necessarily make sense because it wasn't a villain in TNG. Like, I feel like it does have to be connected to TNG somewhere, and the power wraiths just don't connect for me. Not saying it's not possible. Yeah.
The one thing I was going to throw out there, another Deep Space Nine thing, is I do believe the one legacy character we have not seen yet, who I absolutely believe is going to show up, is Colm Meaney. I think you're going to get Chief O'Brien back, because he is absolutely still acting. He just came out with a movie with oh my God, I forgot his name. But he just came out in a movie. No one saw it. It was in the theaters for like 5 minutes, but the dude's still acting. And I think that's the one TNG legacy person you haven't brought back yet, aside from, Tasha and Pulaski, and that's not happening. So
I'd be so worried about him if they brought him back. Good things don't happen to that poor man.
Hey, we've already been told by Lower Decks that he is the most important Starfleet officer in history. Now imagine if he's the guy who shows up at Frontier Day and saves the fleet. That would make him the most important Starfleet officer in history, would it not?
Now, I will give a second theory on this, though, because I watched the clip on Ready Room that they had for next week's episode. And it doesn't show us what's behind the door, but it shows Deanna opening the door, and then basically she runs out of the room.
I'm out. I'm done.
But if we're looking for a TNG connection, that's another, ancient evil, weakened but pissed off, just malevolent entity. Armus, season 1.
Oh, that'd be funny as hell. The mud monster returns.
Well, 'cause, I mean, you have Data pulling out the memory of Tasha, but that's the one, it's an ancient entity, but that would be something that would connect to TNG that Deanna would be absolutely frightened of and just run from.
Yeah, that's true.
Because when Deanna sees it, she gets scared and just breaks the connection with Jack and runs. So it's not something new. It's something they know.
Couple more predictions in the chat. Todd thinks it is going to be the beautiful, the best Starfleet ship of all time, the Enterprise E. And oh my God, if it was a Sovereign class ship, I'm in, but I don't think it's going to happen. And then also Todd says, DS9 always made me worry when it did a O'Brien episode. O'Brien must suffer. O'Brien must suffer. Yeah, I don't know. Again, Blake, I think if it would turned out to be the Paw Wraiths, I would not be surprised at all. I would not be shocked, but I don't think it is. And at the end of the day, on episode 10, The Last Generation, we are going to have the entire crew, which at the end of this episode, we're in the ready room, on the bridge of an Enterprise. Mm-hmm. Whatever that Enterprise may be, that's where they're going to be. And I do think the Titan's going to survive. I think Shaw and Seven are going to survive. At least I hope so. I'm really hoping they don't kill off Shaw, because I think the Titan is where Terry Metalis wants to take this thing next, if he does get a next. But we're going to find out. We got 2 more weeks to figure this stuff out. I really wish they would just drop episodes 9 and 10 together as one movie, but that's asking for too much, I guess. All right, let's go ahead and end it there. For those who are just joining us for the first time, welcome. We are actually a Babylon 5 podcast. We just dropped In the Shadow of Zahadum yesterday. It is our fastest performing episode. So great to see a lot of new people watching it. It's already been watched and listened to over 1,000 times. So thanks for everyone for checking that out. And please make sure to like and subscribe and click that notify button, because we do go live quite a bit, and we want to make sure that you all know we're here so you can interact with us in the chat as we're talking. So please click that notify button as well. And then we will be back here next week to talk Vox, I guess, because they don't tell me the episodes, but they tell Blake. And then next week as well, we will be talking Babylon 5's Knives. So, oh, did you have something? I heard whisper. There's also a lawnmower going on outside, so it's a good time to end this thing. So until next week.
Hearing voices now.
Join us. Make us one. Until next week when we talk about episode 9, Vox, I am Scott, and with me has been
Blake.
And Emily.
And clicky all the buttons. Thanks, everybody. And let's boldly get the hell out of here. Bye.